Namaste. My name is Ruchi Shumali. On behalf of Sangam Talks, I welcome you all in today's talk. Before we get on speaker's introduction and his talk, I would like to read out few basic guidelines. During the talk, you can keep your video on, but to avoid disturbance to others, please keep your audio on mute. We will have a question answer session at the end of the talk at this time when you can ask your queries related to the topic of the discussion. I'm going to share some social media links in the chat window. By subscribing to them, you can go through our previous talks and also get information about our future talks. Today's speaker is Pranshu Saxena. He's a computer scientist and a keen observer of life all around. He regularly writes on social media platforms and is the creator of this interesting page, The Real Mahabharata of Sage Vyas on Facebook. Today's topic is Unsung Warriors and Characters of Mahabharata. There are many crucial roles and characters in Mahabharata who are largely ignored in modern retelling of the epic. For example, warriors like Satyaki, Shalya, Yudhamanyu, Uttamoja, and personalities like Kripacharya, Indrasena, and Vishoka. We will learn of these people and their importance from Pranshuji in today's call. I now invite him to share his thoughts. Pranshuji, over to you.
Namaste. So just think that I wasn't really the creator of it, the creator of the page Real Mahabharata with Vyas. The credit goes to Vijay Bhide, and like he made me the co-creator and allowed me a place to basically space to basically place my stories. So I wanted to concept that, and yeah, and one of the so we can start off. So one of the main a point about Mahabharata from the very beginning. It is literally the mine of information. Everything you need to learn about dharma, arth, kama, moksha, everything comes out of Mahabharata. You can find it's there's actually a statement that if you find something in the world, it will be there in Mahabharata. If you don't find something in Mahabharata, it will not be there in the world. So Mahabharata itself acts as the universal like encyclopedia for all worldly knowledge. And that's where, there's a very interesting concept of introduced Triartho Mahabharata. So there's actually Triartho Veda. So Ved, you can have three scope of meanings in Ved, including Adhyatmic and as is, and of course the Dharmic, Sanskarik. So same way in Mahabharata, each shlok, each story, each word can have three meanings which unite together, and basically they are representing. One is Astikadi, as is. The other is obviously the Upakhyans, transcendental meaning, and the third is Sanskaric / Dharmic. And people have found like several other meanings also, the fourth, the fifth, and the sixth, like some Madhvacharya and everybody. But three should suffice for most human beings in our lifetime, and they basically represent the dharma, arth, kama, all moving towards the moksha, being the aim of our life as is. And of course Mahabharat has like somebody actually there's a very nice website, there's a university in Tamil Nadu. They basically put all the Upakhyans of Mahabharat on their website, and I counted 509 Upakhyans. So Mahabharat has just so much wealth of stories that you and it that you pick up Mahabharat and you open it to any page, and of course you can't really pick up Mahabharat. You pick up 14 volumes of Mahabharat. So any one volume you pick up and you take up to any page, and you will find something new every time. And uh, and that is basically where the power of Mahabharata. Every time I open it, I find something new myself. And I've been reading Mahabharata since my grandfather was, reading me Chanti Parv and Uparichar and Anushasan Parv when I was 6 or 7 years of age. So I've been reading it for 4 decades, and I still find something new. And that's where the power of our languages come into play. Sanskrit is very powerful language, and when you read some of the shlok and you go back and you read it in, like, of course, the English translation or the Hindi translation, and you go back and you read the Sanskrit shlok and you say, well, you know what, it could actually have a very another impactful meaning, and that's what is hidden inside Mahabharata. So that's where I have actually a and and one of the things, basically, because the size and complexity of Mahabharata is so much, there's so many beautiful characters which Vyas has created for us to guide in our life, and as a basically guide points, and those characters get lost, and so therefore I basically, you know I am interested in those characters. So when I started reading Mahabharata, so our um, first Indian viceroy, the first Indian head of state after independence, uh, C. Rajgopalachari, he wrote an English version of Mahabharata. Uh, it was a very concise version, but it was the one version which introduced a lot of Indians to Mahabharata itself. You have to imagine the era in which he wrote. He wrote where the 10% of the population was literate, barely 10%, 11% of the population was literate actually at that time. So a lot of people were understanding and reading the whole story for the first time, and he made it into a, pocketbook size, thing. Same thing with, Dwivedi ji, he did it in Hindi, and K. Munshi in Gujarati and others. And they introduced literally Mahabharata to the masses. And then, of course, I read Kamla Subramanian's excellent uh, expansion of that concise version of Rajgopalachari. She used Dakshinathya a lot. So there, actually, I want to talk about a little bit about the 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 the, the main variants, or you could not say variants, versions of Mahabharata which are there. So there's, of course, the Bori edition, the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute edition. They started in 1919 and they finished the complete translation of Mahabharata as much as they can go back to the Ur Mahabharata, the original, uh, in 1967. And so that is the Bori edition. It actually trims away about 24,000 shlokas out of the Kumbhakonam edition, the Dakshinathya, the southern edition. It trims about 11,000 shlokas outside the northern edition. Then, of course, there's the KMG, Krishna Mohan Ganguly. He basically sponsored a Mahabharata written by about 15 people. 10 of them actually died during the translation of that. It's such a long epic to translate. And they translated it into English, Bengali and English. And English one is basically available online. And that's actually and they use Neelkant edition. So that's one. And then, of course, there's the Gita Press edition. Gita Press edition, of course, Gita Press now won the Gandhi Peace Prize also, and is one of the best editions. They actually married the Northern edition, expanded Northern edition, 3,000 extra shloks in those ones, and they added 8,000 shloks on Dakshinathya to make up the 100,000 number. And of course, and then we have the Dakshinathya, the Kumbhakonam edition being the one of the best books out there, 1930s, T. Srinivas Shastri and others who worked on it. So these are the ones which you can use as that. There are other variants also. And again, there's another idea I want to tell. No variant of Mahabharata, no true variant of Mahabharata or even folk diverges from the main storyline itself. There is, if somebody is evil, he doesn't become good. If somebody has a certain certain career path in Mahabharata, they don't change all of a sudden in the variants. Of course, there could be stories like um, Iravan is found as a gate guardian to the various Draupadi Amma temples from actually, if you go right across the peninsula, if you go from Jinji right across into the Mangalore, right across the peninsula, you will find a lot of Draupadi Amma temples, and Iravan is a gate guard there. And supposedly he survived the war or a variation of that. But that's just, again, various local figures get translated into it. So that's why Mahabharata is very rich in this complexity. And so therefore I actually focus mainly on Bori and, of course, KMG. And once I started reading Kamla Subramanian's version, some of the characters come alive very much. They are basically, and if you look at any TV serial, B.R. Chopra's Star Plus Mahabharat, and other various renderings. There was I think, Feroz Khan serial back in 90s. None of them actually have a pride of place for some of these characters who are very interesting characters in Mahabharata, like Satyaki, Shalya, Yudhamanyu and Uttamoja, and Kripacharya. So early days when I was reading Kamla Subramaniam's back in 80s, Yudhamanyu and Uttamoja came out in that picture. And again, I chose these characters as an idea because Satyaki and Yudhamanyu Uttamoja, basically, as I colored in red on the screen, as you can see, they basically were on the side of the Pandavas. The Shalya and Kripacharya was in the part of the Kauravas. And but they were also chosen for another reason, which we will come into it. So let me start off with basically kickstart with Satyaki. Satyaki is the right-hand man of Krishna right through in Bhagavad Purana. In all the adventures the Dwarka Yadavas participate in, Satyaki is the main warrior. He is the person Krishna depends upon in every aspect. In the major war after the Mahabharata, the Banasur conflict, Krishna is the Yadava armies engaged the armies of Banasur and his 12 Akshanis. There also, Krishna is of course battling Mahadev. Mahadev being coming to his disciples' aid, and of course Pradyuman takes over and he fights his own emanation, Sanat Kumar. Sanat Kumar is born as Skand and as Pradyuman. So they basically are. It's a very nice poetic allusion also Vyas is putting here, is a person contending with himself. मुझे खुद से ही जूझना मेरी किस्मत है कि मैं खुद से ही जूझूं, मुझ में ही मेरा समुंदर, मैं ही वो कश्ती हूँ. So that's very, and but in that Satyaki is the one who fights with Banasur. So Satyaki is your main character. In the battlefield in Mahabharata, Satyaki is grandson of Shini. He's son of Satyak. He is adopted son of Satyak, because in Mahabharata we actually get the phrase straight away that Satyaki is maternal grandson of Shini, and he carries that conflict with the Somdatta family, with the family of Bahalik, Somdatta's family, into the Mahabharata war also. And that's actually a very nice hidden story we have regarding Mahabharata. In itself, Mahabharata is not only a conflict between, you can say, the forces of establishment of the flow which has stopped, the dharma which has actually got polluted by the concept of inaction, akarma. And so Mahabharata is a fight between karmic and akarmic forces itself. And that is reflected in the characters who represented both sides also. Satyaki is one of the karmic characters. He comes across as the doer, and he is one of the major warriors. So basically, after Arjun and Bhim, he is the third best warriors on the Pandava side, according to my estimation. So after the big two, and he is the main one. Drishtuman and others too come into picture, but Satyaki is the one basically. He comes across as the main guy they depend upon on every other day. He's the one who actually breaks into the Chakravyuh on the 14th day, the day they went after Jayadratha. He is one of the 5 warriors who basically break into Chakravyuh that day. The other 2, of course, Arjun and Bhim being the 2, Satyaki 3, other 2 being Yudhamanyu and Uttamoja, and that's why they were chosen also for this. So basically, they basically represented the gloved, you could say, the iron gloved strike of the Pandava forces, the aggression, and that aggression continues throughout, even on that day itself. Satyaki actually, finally, towards the end of the day, Satyaki has been fighting across. He has come across 30 miles. He's broken into the Kaurava lines. He's gone inside 20 miles inside Kaurava lines. He's continuously fighting. At that point in time, he engages Bhurishrava. And now Bhurishrava has a boon from his father. Satyaki's grandfather and Bhurishrava's father, actually they fought at the beginning of everything at Devki Swamvar. At Devki Swamvar, Shini actually basically took Devki away, and Somdatta opposed it. So literally, Krishna wouldn't have been born if Somdatta had won that battle. And that defeat in that battle is what basically rankled with Somdatta so much, he went to Shiva. And again, Mahadev comes so many times across. So people always say it's a Vaishnav Granth. No, it is. Both of them are there. All of them. I mean, Brahma is there in in a big way. So Satyak and so Somdat asks for a boon that let me have a son who will one day avenge me, avenge this defeat. And this is another point of it. Somdat got defeated in a battlefield, which is not a something which is a which is a bad thing. Kshatriyas fight, and there's a victory and a loser. But he basically took it as an ego issue, and that ego is what drove the conflict to Mahabharata. That ego of Duryodhan, that ego of Dhritarashtra, that ego continuously drove this conflict towards it. And the other side basically let go of that ego. So again, on that day, Satyaki fights Bhurishrava, and there's a very important thing. Bhurishrava was about to kill Satyaki because Satyaki had fainted away. He had fainted away, and Bhurishrava was about to cut off his head. At that time, Arjun interferes and cuts off Bhurishrava's arm. And this is a very seminal moment, and he basically uh, indicates very clearly that this is an Arjun defends his move. I'm not going to and this is another people accuse Arjun of doing something adharmic. No, it's not adharmic. Saving your comrade is the biggest thing. Any person who has ever been on a real battlefield knows that you are dependent upon your comrades, your fellow soldiers, for saving your life, for returning back to that day. And their lives are also in your hands. So Arjun did exactly what every real soldier has been doing for last 5,000 years of human history where there's been conflict. Only 68, somebody did calculate, only 68 years of those last 5,000 years is in which humanity never engaged in a war. We have always been at war in some sort of the other. Some portion of our when we separated from the Atma and became from the Paramatma and became the Atma across the Jana, across the all the beings around the world, we've always been at war. So only 68 years that somebody did Ray Robinson counted once. Anyway, so coming back to it, then Satyaki kills Bhurishrava. Bhurishrava gives up the battle and Satyaki kills him. And people again have said that this is something he did wrong, but he defended himself that what he did. And then there was this, Bhurishrava on the 5th day of the battlefield killed 10 sons of Satyaki. A father had lost his 10 sons. His next generation was wiped out in the in front of his eyes, and he took revenge on that. He acted as a father, grieving father, taking revenge for his sons. So these are all very beautiful expressions which Vyas indicates that we are. Satyaki was the right-hand man of Krishna. Krishna would not choose somebody who is evil or something as his right-hand man. But that person has that capability of moving across that black to white segments in his karma. And that's what Satyaki represents very well. And eventually, Satyaki is the one who kickstarts the final conflict, the fight between the Yadavas, the civil war, and he basically and he dies in that along with the rest of the Yadavas. And Satyaki is a very major character in our history. He is not recognized by modern TV serials or something, but ancient kings basically looked upon him as a great guide. The imperial Rashtrakutas, the Gadavals of Kannauj, Jajan, counted him as an ancestor. It's in the inscriptions and Shillalekh and the coinage. He is basically he is the ancestor of Rathors of Jodhpur. VP Singh, Prime Minister of India. So they are all, Satyaki is the ancestor of all these people as per their own claims, right? So Satyaki is a major character, and just like it's so funny that he's just ignored in most of the. There's a southern, actually, there was around 2014, 2015, there was a Tamil version of Mahabharata TV serial also in which Satyaki was a character. So he's there somewhere, but not everywhere. The second character which comes into picture is Shalya. Now, Shalya is a very important character. Shalya is the brother of Madri. He is the king of the western part of India, son of Artayan. His father's name is given Artayan. He is also called Katavya. So that's basically his grandfather's name is Kitav. And he shares that grandfather with another famous character, Shakuni. Shakuni is also called Katavya. Shakuni's son Ulluka also called Katavya. And there's a very interesting part when you look at Mahabharata. So we know that, Shalya and Shakuni are literally first cousins. Gandhari is sister of Shalya as much as Madri is sister of Shalya. Nakul Sadev are as much nephews of Shakuni as Duryodhan and others, Dushasana et al. Are the nephews of Shakuni. So this is a very interesting. There's a double binding here we have. So Shalya actually comes to fight on the side of Yudhishthir, but he's tricked into joining on the side of Duryodhan, and it shows a little bit of karma in the actions of Duryodhan. Duryodhan is very akarmic throughout. He just sits around. He knows I've got Bhisham on my side, I've got Drona on my side, I've got Karn on my side, I've got all these guys. I don't need to do one actually positive action he does take is tricking Shalya into joining his side. And this is a very important point there. He offers Shalya the commander-in-chief on the day one. And if Shalya had been the commander on day one, Pandavas would have never won. There's a very big difference about it. How come, they had Bhisham, Drona, and Karn, and why I'm saying that Shalya was the most dangerous warrior or commander on their side, because there are two parts in a war. There is actually warriors. The warriors are fighting each other, but they're like lakhs on each side. They're fighting each other. It's the commanders which make the difference. When we went into Bangladesh, East Pakistan, in 1971, there were about 150,000 Pakistani troops inside, 92,000 regulars, 45,000 irregulars. We had the same number of troops coming in from three sides against a solid center. It was the genius of how G.S. Arora and and the Eastern Command, how they organized their troops, how they used the troops. So the commander is a very big difference in who wins the war, who loses the war. And this is where Shalya is the difference. Before the war started, immediately Duryodhan asks, how many days can you kill the Pandava army? Bhisham says, I can kill in 30 days. Drona says, I can kill in 30 days. Kripacharya says, I can kill in 60 days. Ashwatthama says, I can kill in 10 days. Karn says, oh, I can kill in 5 days. And Shalya doesn't say anything. And you notice what they are saying. They're saying, I. When that news came back to Yudhishthir, he asked his 25 different people who had been assembled warriors. They are all named there. And he asked Arjun, how many days do you think you will be able to kill? And he says, we will fight together and we will defend our troops. And in that defense of our troops, if we kill the enemy troops, they will be killed. He doesn't give a date. He basically puts the priority. And again, it's I, and it's we. And Arjun says, that's why they won the war. It's a team effort. And this is where Shalya was the key. On three commanders took command of the Kaurav forces, and they lost almost all the army. On the last day, Shalya took over the remnants of very few soldiers left. And first thing he does is he asks all the officers who were left alive, we will fight together. We. And during the battle, Yudhishthira actually says, I have swum the oceans called Bhisham and Dron. But in the Gopad, when the cow walks through and a cow's foot presses into a sand and the water collects there, small puddle. He said, Gopad Tulya Shalya is going to destroy us. And that is the difference. Shalya immediately is coming across as the great commander. If he was there on the day one, they would never have. Kaurav wouldn't have that problem because he had a different outlook to fighting, the same outlook which was on the Panda side. And again, that's the thing. The war could have continued till it just exhausted and everybody and eventually well, Krishna would be still alive. So the point is, we Pandavas would have eventually won. There's no scenario in which if Duryodhana had chosen Shalya to be the commander on day one, Pandavas still would have won eventually, but the cost would have been enormous, literally across. So again, and the cost was enormous, literally across, as we find out when we come to Mr. Kripacharya. So then we have Yudhamanyu and another part of Shalya. Shalya was the king of West. They had a different society structure. The woman had much more rights. Women had property. And so there's this very nice conversation between Karn and Shalya, where Karn basically decries. Karn acts as the voice of what they modern terms they call it, the Baniya Brahmana axis, the patriarchy, that you allow women so many rights and everything. This is a funny talk about it. So and again, this is where they are diverging in how they look upon it. And Shalya calls back Karna, you sell women. The kingdom was known for selling women as property. And so you treat women as property. We have women who have equal rights. So the woman's actually the sister's son succeeds. So that's where a very interesting point is that the women have much more rights in the western part of India versus the eastern part of India. So they are representing the two sides, the Ang and the mother, with the central India in between. So that's the other part of the Shalya. So Shalya comes across as a very complex and very interesting character, which we again, it gets hidden with because of the size of the Mahabharata. Then, of course, there's Yudhamanyu and Uttamoja, and they came across when I was first reading Kamala Subramaniam. They were the warriors who were the chariot wheel protectors of Arjun. And they were there on day one, and they ended the war on day 18, going throughout the war. They stuck with thin and thick through Arjun. Of course, the main role they came across is on the 14th day when they joined Arjun and they went all the way through 48 miles through the Shakat view, through the Padma view and the Suchimukh view, and they killed Jayadratha. And that's actually where I have written in Sai Sarupa's anthology, The Unsung Valor, I chose to write on Yudhamanyu as the main character. So that's where, and of course, my Twitter handle is Yudhamanyu Panchal because of this, because of his character, and again, they're both interesting warriors, but they are another very important part of it. They are not they're called sons of Drupad from time to time, but they are very clearly indicated that they are not sons of Drupad. They are actually Panchal warriors. One of the Panchal is actually a coalition of 6 tribes. There's a central tribe and the 5 tribes around it. So there's another basically big myth people don't think about. Panchal doesn't mean 5 tribes. It's actually 6 tribes. There's always the tribe around which the other 5 are. The one who shelters 5 tribes, Panch Alai. So that's where one of the 5 tribes which is sheltered is Sanjay. And Uttamoja is mentioned as Sanjay. So they're not even actually brothers. So a lot of people actually in the retellings and everything assume them to be brothers. They're not even brothers. They are just best friends who basically came up together. They've been together since whenever they started serving under Drupad, and they basically come into action during the Mahabharata war as the main characters. And they are so important that, Madhavacharya actually devotes some time to it. And that's where another very important and very interesting aspect of Mahabharata comes into picture. Mahabharata is a Bhoomi Bhar project of Vyas. The earth, Bhumi mother, the mother earth, basically. She comes, Prithvi Mata, she comes as a cow to Brahma and asks that, there is so much atatai, so many cruel people who are ruling me, that I am under the weight of their evil actions. I am just cannot bear them. So Brahma, and this is Brahma Parmeshti. And again, we always think of, so there's a Param Shiva, Brahma himself, like each face of Brahma is the universe. And then there is Mahat, and then Dharma, and then that comes out. And so Parmeshti. So Brahma Parmeshti is the one who we worship. Brahma Parmeshti works with Vyas, and he comes up with this Bhumi Bharan project, where they sort of regulate and maneuver everybody into this battlefield called Dharmkshetra, Kurukshetra, and everybody, all the evil kings are destroyed so that Kali can come in. And when Kali comes in, that evil has gone away. Of course, there's going to be more evil. Evil is always there. And of course, Kali Yuga is the training age of humanity. Satyug, there's no, Dharma has all the 4 feet. There's no need for, there is, we are taken care of. Then in Treta, Dharma, 1 foot comes away from Dharma, and the bull Vrash roop of Dharma. And then in Dwapar, 2 legs come away. In Kali, 3 legs come away, and only 1 leg is left. But it is the training age for humanity. We are not, so Kala, that's why we call it machine. The machine, we use the word Kal also. It's the connection there. It's a training age for humanity. So, but to clean the earth before that, that is why the Kurukshetra happened. Now, in that, Vyas uses and he creates these warriors, but he creates a scholar as well as a warrior. Mahabharata is about knowledge. Mahabharata is about Saraswati. And so each warrior has a corresponding scholar. He has 4 main disciples. Pal. Pal is in charge of Rigved. He's Rigvedacharya. Pal is avatar of Shesh. The warrior is Baldev, Balram. The Indra avatar is Jamini. Jamini is Atharved. Oh no, Jamini is Rig, Sam, Yajurved. And warrior is Indra's son Arjun. Then there is, of course, Sumantu, Atharva. Sumantu is the avatar of Garud, the scholar, and the warrior is Satyaki. See, that's one of the reasons why I chose Satyaki as the beginning. And Mahabharatacharya himself, the one who is in charge of Samved, is Vaishampayan, the Avesh, the avatar, Ansh avatar of Brahma himself. And the warrior is Yudhamanyu. So there's that's another very interesting facet there. He basically sits behind. We have Shiv, we have on that chariot, we have Krishna, the Vishnu himself, Nar as Arjun, we have Shiva as Bajrangi, as Hanuman, right there on that chariot, and next to it on the wheel, as a wheel protector, we have Brahma also. So there's a very interesting, that's why I said that Triartho, there are 3, they're transcendental. There's as is Astikadi, and there is a transcendental meaning here also. Uparicharir, one which is a higher meaning, and of course, samsaric. So this is where, Yudhamanyu and Uttamoja come into picture. And Uttamoja and Yudhamanyu are also considered 2 of the 8 Gandharvas. So there are 8 main Gandharvas who are basically born as Drupad and Virat. They are also, the story of Gaj, Vishnu protecting the Gaj from the crocodile. So that's where Hahahu come in again. And of course, then there is Paravasu and Vishwavasu, which are Uttamoja and Yudhamanyu born as Gandharva. So actually, they are very big characters across the Purans. And so when you start reading about him, all the famous women you can think of, Madalasa, Queen Madalasa, who teaches her sons, Alark being the 4th one. That Madalasa is a daughter of Vishwavasu. another daughter of Vishwavasu's Pramdwara, in the story of Ruru and Pramdwara, one of the most beautiful love stories there is in Mahabharata in the beginning, that Ruru is able to convince the. So, of course, Savitri convinces the god to let Satyavan live. When his wife passes away, Pramdwara, Ruru convinces the god to give half his life to Pramdwara, and so that Pramdwara can live. So they are all, Pramdwara is the daughter of Shas. So they are all these interesting characters. And of course, there is the daughter of Vishwavasu who marries Jimutvahan. And he's a very powerful concept of sacrificing. He basically sacrifices himself for a Nag, so that this mother comes and says, my son Nag son is going to be killed by Garud, and Jimut he basically sacrifices himself. So all these very beautiful stories are connected together through Yudhamanyu. And then we have Kripacharya. Kripacharya is the Gautam. Their Saptarishis are represented right across in the Mahabharata. And he's a representative of the Saptarishi. He is Shatanan's grandson's son. Gautam, Shatanan, Satyadhiti, Shardwan, and his son is Krip. Kripacharya is the brother of Bhishma because he was adopted by Shantanu. Kripa se utha liya. So Kripacharya is literally the guy who should have actually got the throne. Bhar mein jaye, Duryodhan and Yudhishthir and their lineages. He is there. But you see, there is a very interesting concept Bhishma actually says in Shanti Parv. Though Shantanu adopted him, his father, Shardwan, came back and reclaimed Krip as his son. So Shardwan, though was adopted by Shantanu, cannot be claimed as a son or of the kul of Shantanu. So Ashwathama, and there's a very interesting point because he has a sister, Kripi, and we don't know if Shardwan claimed Kripi or not. And this is an interesting point that, Ashwathama is the son of Kripi, son of Dronacharya, and he is actually and Dronacharya becomes the king of Uttar Panchal, and later when Pandavas go to, after the dice game, when Pandavas go into the forest, that is when Indraprastha is actually given to Dronacharya to rule. So it's very interesting that, there is an acknowledgement that Kripi is the Kuru princess. And so Ashwathama is going to succeed. And Kripacharya fights on the side of Kauravas. He doesn't do much. He even defeats Yudhamanyu actually on day 17 at one point in time. Yudhamanyu defeats Ashwathama also on that day, or stops Ashwathama from coming to aid of Karn, and then Arjuna is able to kill Karn, but that's another story. But the main part is Kripacharya doesn't actually exert himself much. For the person who says, I can alone kill the whole Pandava army in 60 days, he basically doesn't actually exert himself much throughout the days. And that's another part of the thing we don't hear about. In 1965 war, they say Indian Navy did not do anything. They were holding the line. They were making sure our shipping lines were intact. Those guys had a submarine. So the people who defend, everybody knows Bape, everybody knows Messi, but they don't talk about the defenders who prevent the goals from happening. And so Kripacharya and Ashwathama actually play that role very effectively for the Kaurav side throughout the war. There are these Bhim, Arjun, Satyaki, these guys raging around and defeating, basically, scoring goals, you could say. And these are the guys who are doing a lot of defense, making sure that there's not a massacre happening all the time. So Kripacharya basically doesn't come, and Kripacharya is part of the three who go at the night on the Soptik and they murder the remaining soldiers and sons of Draupadi and sons of Draupadi. But his actions are not deemed evil enough. He remains a part of the Pandav family. Yudhishthir actually makes him as the warden, as the guru of Parikshit, of the next generation. And Kripacharya is supposed to be still alive. He's one of the immortals, and he's going to be the Saptarishi in the next Savarni Manvantar. And again, there are other stories about Chirakari, the older brother of Shatanand, and Chirakari is also basically a Gautam who cannot die. So maybe Kripacharya is an emanation of him or something like that, or both of them get confused, or there are two Gautams who will be alive throughout. So Kripacharya comes across as a very important character who is the bridge between the next age and our current age. So he's going to be there. And of course, before I round up quickly before our question and answer, so I actually chose the three main other characters called Dhatrinaika, Indrasen, and Vishok. Vishok is the charioteer of Bhim. He's the only son of Krishna who came to the battlefield. All the other 16,108 wives and sons from all the wives and everything, all the great warriors, the Yadava warriors, and all that, none of them came to war except his son by Kubja, Trivakra, the lady who was thrice bent, he says. So Vishok is the only son of Krishna who comes to war, and he is with he's Bhim's charioteer. He is there from beginning, and that's another very important point. Indrasen and Vishok serve as uh, they act as the principal officers to Yudhishthir and Bhim. They are the person behind the guys who actually get their things done. So that's one of the things I like about. I like these characters, the persons who are actually making sure. So Yudhishthir is the one who is basically, okay, I want to do this. I want to do Rajsuya. The person who is actually making sure that the trees are cut, the food is prepared, the palaces are built, the guest houses are built, thousands of people coming to the army. There, where would their chariots be put? Where would their horses be put? Where would their servants be put? Where would everybody would be put? That's what Indrasen does. And Indrasen is the guy who basically is, and Indrasen is the one who is in charge of all the sons when they go into Udyog, and when they go into a Virat, when they go into Agyatwas. Indrasen is the one left in charge of the sons. So Indrasen is a very important character, which basically comes across. He's also a suit, by the way, as is Vishok, the son of Krishna. So basically, again, they're charioteers also. So that's basically another point of it. Like, Dhritarashtra has a Sanjay, Yudhishthir has Indrasen, and they continue throughout. They survive the war also. They don't die. And of course, Vishok is mentioned as Sansar Vastra, basically a text he wrote later on in Pancharatra that come across. But that's why another. And then there's a very, very interesting character called Dhatrinaika. She comes across very small point. When Jayadratha kidnaps Draupadi and Pandavas return, Dhatrinaika is there, and she basically scolds the Pandavas. Now Jayadratha has taken Draupadi, immediately put on your armors and you go and you get her back. And she scolds them. And Dhatrinaika is a very interesting term. Dhatrinaika means sort of chief of your foster siblings. Draupadi was born from fire. She did not have a milk mother. So Dhatrinaika has to, and she's called Draupadi's Dasi actually at that point. But when she's talking to Pandavas, she's called Dhatrinaika. She's their foster sibling. When Kunti had the sons, Yudhishthir, Bhim, and Arjun, that foster mother's daughter is Dhatrinaika. So that's a very interesting concept. They have their foster sister with them from the beginning, from whenever they were born, right down to when they were in the forest and in exile. These people stuck with them so they were not alone. They were the five brothers, and their wife was not alone. There was a group around them. There was this family connection. There was this family support. That's another part of India. Our main part of India, why we have survived, is the family connect. We fight together. They die in complete, like, jars happen. The battlefields, everybody's lost. But the family sticks together somehow, and we have survived. मिट गए मिस्र यूनान, but कुछ तो है बात हम में कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी. So we are still there, and that is the family connect. And this is again, Dhatrinaika shows it, like she's there, right there. She just comes in that one scene right there, and then scolds the Pandavas, and then they go and they rescue Draupadi, and he comes back. And there's another very point is that Draupadi does mention a very important point why they will never actually always may never have friendship with Duryodhan and Kauravas is when Bhim was poisoned at Praman-Koti. He survived. See, if Bhim had died at Praman-Koti, Yudhishthir may never have actually gone to the lengths to accommodate Kauravas. He would have taken the revenge for his brother because they had broken the biggest thing. They have broken the family compact. You don't hurt family. That's the biggest thing. In all the cultures around the world, because of the lack of resources and everything, people tend to look very inward. All the other cultures, they look at the outsider, the foreigner, as enemy. Xenophobia, the word comes from a Greek word for the same, fear of the stranger. And what do we have in our culture? Atithi Devo Bhava. We invite them. We treat people, outsiders even, as gods themselves. Atithi Devo Bhava. The whole humanity can only survive if we all actually get along together. And that was from their core principle. One of the core principles of Indian culture from the beginning was to accept the differences, to accept the outsiders, to learn from everybody. The knowledge is the main paramount. And as a part of it, anything who breaks the family, the family compact goes away. And this is where Bhim actually, Draupadi says to Krishna when Krishna comes after the Dyut, Draupadi is not much, is maybe angry about what happened to her at the on the day. But she tells Krishna, I am very, very worried about Bhim. Bhim's brother, Bhim's foster sibling, Bhim's charioteer, was murdered at Praman-Koti. Praman-Koti was not just the murder attempt on Bhim. They murdered Bhim's foster sibling also. That's something which, like a Nasur in his heart, in his dil mein Nasur ki tarah, like the thorn in his heart. That thing basically Draupadi mentions that Bhim is nursing, and Bhim is able to look across it. He's sitting in the same kitchen in Rajsuya, making in charge with Dushasan and Bhim in the kitchen together in Rajsuya. That's the interesting part. He actually literally drinks Dushasan's blood later on. But at Rajsuya Yagya, the family thing where they're celebrating the conquest of the everything, the family is celebrating Rajsuya, they're both in the kitchen together. Though Bhim knows that this guy is probably responsible for killing his own sibling, his foster sibling, and that's what he cares for. That Draupadi also mentions that something. So he's able to look beyond it, and that's again this small character which Dhatanayika comes in, telecasts how interesting the characters are there. The depth of characters of Bhim, even Draupadi. Draupadi is angry about herself, but she's also, talking to Krishna not about herself. She's talking to Krishna about Bhim. Bhim is very angry right now. Bhim is nursing that anger, and he may, and again that Bhim overcomes that that thing. He waits the 13 years. 13 years Yudhishthir gives, and that's basically where Dhatanayika again comes in. The family is there together from the beginning when they were in Shatshrang Parvat, and from there they basically came to went through to the exile, to the Agyatwas. Of course, at Agyatwas, all the rest hid. And in Agyatwas, Kripacharya is the guy who's hunting for them. Kripacharya is in charge of the spies. It's not anybody. It's not Shakuni. It's like in TV serials and everything, they show Shakuni. Shakuni has got nothing to do with it. Shakuni actually stopped being the supporter of Duryodhana after the Ghosh Yatra. It's Kripacharya who's in charge of that. Kripacharya is the one who gives the guidelines to spies. Look for these things. And the one which he wrote, the directions he gives to the spies, those directions are the ones Mahinder Kapoor, Pradeep, Kavi Pradeep actually translated as Jis Desh in Manoj Kumar movie, Upkar. That song literally comes from there. Where mind is without fear and the head is held high. From Rabindranath Tagore, it comes from the same. That Kripacharya's guidelines to the spies. So that's basically some of the characters, smaller characters, very lesser known, but of course impactful, which I wanted to talk about. So we can give the stage over to the questions.
This was such an interesting and insightful talk. We came to know about many lesser known treasures of Mahabharata. Thank you so much again. And I now will take questions from the audience. So please click on the raise hand icon if you want to ask a question. I will unmute you and then you can ask your question. And I would also request you to switch on your video so that a speaker can also see you while you are asking your question. And try
Deepak
to
has a
keep
question. Deepak had raised his hand.
Okay, yeah. Deepak ji, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, till Deepak ji unmute themselves. Neena ji would like to ask a question. So Neena ji.
Insight into so many small characters that we have somehow heard names of, but we really didn't know much about them. Like you mentioned about Shalya and being Shakuni's cousin, Gandhare's cousin. So, but as you know, I wrote like when I was searching for Madri's story in Mahabharata, the original Mahabharata, they don't mention much about these things. So, what
Names. Sanskrit. That's why I said when you read the Sanskrit, right? So like you will say the same name, right? You will say Yudhishthir. You will say Kurushresht, Kuru Pungava, Pura Para Aram Pura Aram. Ripu Pura Parantapa, the one who conquers. So they have these other names, right? So Shalya has these. So when you look at the Sanskrit, Shalya have these other names: Katavya, Artyani, which basically tells Artyani means son of Artyan.
But then in translations, they should be mentioning. They
do. They actually, that's how I actually found it. So like Shakuni is called Katavya again. Shakuni, Uluk, his son, is also called Katavya. Of course, we know Shakuni is Subali, Subalputra.
Because he was son of Subalu
or whatever. So another very interesting connect will come here is that there was also a Rishi Kitav at one point. So they could be disciples of the same Rishi. So which is basically, like in modern terms, we would say they're basically followers of like Arya Samaji or something. So it could be that also. But when they are using these terms in Mahabharata, that's not saying we can interpret that it is a dharmic or sansakarik, that third meaning, right? So when they're using kitavve, is it grandfather they're mentioning, or an ancestor, common ancestor, close ancestor, or they're mentioning the dharmic meaning the guru or a sort of a practices, normal daily. That's one of the powers of us, right? We don't have a pope, we don't have a common book. You can't kill us because we have so many of us. We are like whack-a-mole, you hit one, you destroy one temple, we have thousands more, and we'll rebuild again and again. And that's the power, why we can't be killed. That's why Sanatana. So and we have thousands of ways of looking at the same thing. We have thousands of cults or sects and groups inside us. So Kitav could be a group. So that is also an interpretation. But when you look at these names and everything, so Madri is not called Artyani. I mean, of course, Madri doesn't actually appear much. Unfortunately, that is, then she appears and then she vanishes. But she's there in the memories of her brother. Obviously, he comes to fight many years later for her sister and ends up actually fighting against. And of course, she's in the memory of, at one place Draupadi says, Nakul Sahadev don't remember the forest. They were little kids when their mother passed away. They always looked upon Kunti as the mother, and of course Yudhishthir as a father figure. But Yudhishthir remembered probably the mother, his stepmother. Yudhishthir was old enough to remember Madri. So when Dharam said, I want a son. You want one of your brothers should be alive. And he said, I only need Nakul because Madri's son. So that's where, that.
Yeah, you had mentioned that to me. Thanks. And the other thing is that you mentioned about ego, that Mahabharata is mostly story of ego of different people. So does Yudhishthir's decision to play on the dice game also come as ego to you?
It could be. So there's multiple interpretations of it. There's also the probabilistic pattern, right? So in probability, right, when you are, of course, he is the person who has no guile in himself, the person who doesn't practice guile, the person who looks upon everybody with equal light. He thinks everybody is good. If a person is good, he looks and he observes everybody is good. He doesn't consider the point that there could be evil there. There could be trickery. So if there's no trickery, I lose one, there's a 50-50% chance I'm going to win the next. So I actually think of it as a more psychological interpretation here, is where Yudhishthira, and again, ego may come to it. He is a mathematician, and that later comes across, right? He's given the Ritupan, like that story of the null and everything, and finally the Rishi teaches him the dice and the combinatorial mathematics. So we get combinatorial mathematics right there, the principles in Mahabharata. So everything which is there in the world can be found in Mahabharata. So there, basically, Yudhishthir's ego as a point of maybe a mathematician is coming across. I lose one, so I got 50% chance of losing this one. The next person, if I lose 2 in a row, it's only like 25% chance of losing. If I lose 3 in a row, it's 12 and a half. I'm going to win the next one. So there is that thing comes in. That's called the gambler's dread, actually. See, what the gamblers don't realize is the real world, the when you spin that wheel, when you put the card, well, cards is a different thing. When you do, probability doesn't enter into it. Each throw of dice is a separate universe in itself. You have 50% chance of winning, 50% chance of losing. That's what they call the gambler's folly. Gamblers cannot accept that. They look at it very mathematically, and that's the ego, that mathematician's ego. That could be the part of it. Why Yudhishthir kept on playing. That definitely is there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Pranchuji. Deepak ji has written his question on the chat box. In the chat box, he said that he has some problem with his headset. So I'm going to read his question. You have such a vast knowledge of Mahabharata. How did you develop such a deep interest to know more? And most importantly, how do we ensure future generations know all this and the knowledge does not get lost?
That's the point of it. So and Deepak is actually victim of a lot of my continuous barrages of information. So that's the part of it. Okay, there are two aspects to it. Not everybody has that, but I unfortunately have fortunately have the gift. I cannot forget if I read something. But over 50 years of time, that becomes like a lot of stuff on your head. Your hippocampus can only accommodate this much. So I write it down. I just put it out. Tell it to Deepak, Bharti. They basically and so then my sort of got relief. Okay, now I can focus on something new, and that's the other part of it. How do we ensure it? We basically record it. We have the media to record it now. Our ancestors did not have that capability. Vyas had to sit these guys down and said, chant the mantras. He was given a huge corpus of 10 lakh granthas, and he edited down to 10,000, 11,000 shlokas in Rig Ved, 1,027 hymns. He basically taught the same to Pal, the same one exactly are taught to Vashampayan, and almost half of the same are in the Jaminis also. He basically realized these are the most important hymns. These 600 to 1000 hymns are the most important ones. And he puts it to 3 different Rishi families. And that's the idea. You spread it out. You share the knowledge. The only way the knowledge doesn't die is you share it. If you keep it as a lake, as a small, it has to be a river. It has to be Sarita. That's Saraswati. That's why Saraswati, right? And one of the, again, Vinashana Parv, the Vinashan Tirth, it comes in Shalya Parv. Again, there's a double meaning to it, right? There's a meaning that, Saraswati did vanish into desert. That's a geographical fact. But Balram is also noting at that point in time, the knowledge is disappearing. Kali Yuga is coming, right? So now in a current time, because of the color, the machine itself, we have the ability keep on recording, keep on having these discussions, keep on having these Zoom sessions, keep on writing and illustrating this knowledge. And again, you see, Deepak, the very important part of your question is how do we separate wheat from the chaff? 2013, all the human sum of knowledge, let's call it X or 8X, let's call it 8X. In 2013, you know how much extra knowledge was added to the whole universe itself or human understanding? 92X. And most of it was Facebook likes. Most of it was, you see, how, what, so that's what Deepak is actually asking is, how do we actually separate wheat from chaff and basically present it? We have to spread the word out. We have to tell the true stories. And that's one of the things why I talk about these lesser known characters. I don't want them to be lost in the for the future generations. I don't want it to be unfortunate retellings which we see right now, where it's about about one of the main characters by people who do not do well. Okay, and again, everybody has a right to write about it and retell their versions. They don't read everything, which is fine. Whatever you read, whatever you grasp, you tell it out. That is all true. But uh, we should also sort of create a space where we try and inculcate. That's what the people at Bori did. Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. They wanted to find the Ur Mahabharata, the closest one to the original, without all the things. And they, for 50 years, they took, so many of the editors died while they did that process. But again, that was an attempt to try to hold the knowledge and to pass it on to the next generation. And that's all. And it has just been easier since then. They did not have it. And so that's where, Deepak, I hope that answers your question a little, is that we have to continuously strive to present that knowledge. And Deepak has beautiful book recently about the first 5 days of Mahabharat war. He has got a series out there. And second book will be probably the remaining 5 days of the Bhisham Parv. And then there will be Dron Parv, Abhimanyu Vad, Jayadratha Vad, and Dron Vad Parv, and then Karna and Shalya. And again, the way he has been retelling it is also very beautiful. So is that there are 30,000 shlokas in Var Parvs. It's 1.5 times the length of the entire Ramayana. But he has made it a little more succinct, and he has basically shown it from the point of the view of the characters. So that's one of the ways to spread it, keep the knowledge alive. And that's why I write using these small these characters. I don't want to say small characters. I just say lesser known characters, the unsung characters.
Thank you, Pranchuji. Let's take one more question from Neena ji. Neena ji.
First thing, which version would you recommend to readers of Mahabharat for first read, kind of?
So it depends upon your language. You see, if your primary language is Hindi,
okay,
I would say that
Gita, please.
If we can. There's Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi's. This is like a Kamla Subramaniam variation. So the Mahavir Prasad Dwivedi is Hindi, right? So this is a little more detailed than the smaller one. But like Rajgopalachari is a very good example. But when you go into the next level, Gita Press is a very good example. And of course, the English Bori by Vivek Debroy, that's a very good one I would recommend. And of course, and if you understand Sanskrit, and have the time, Kumbkonam edition, that has got 25% extra stories and knowledge literally available.
So Deepak ji has shared his number, so that's very thank you. Let me just note it down. Yeah. And I think we should conclude today's session here. Again, on behalf of Sangam Talks, would like to thank Pranshu ji and our lovely audience.
Yeah, can I talk about quickly, just plug my latest one, the anthology, The Flight of Deities?
Yes.
This was The Flight of Deities is a series of 10 stories. These are Dr. Meenakshi Jain actually did a very scholastic work about the destruction of our temples since the invaders came, and how the various people, for ordinary people, small people, they basically have fought to preserve, to preserve the the vigraha, the icons. They hid them and everything. So we actually get a very good inscription right away from a descendant of Satyaki, Govind Chandra Ghedaval, son of Jayachand. He writes an inscription, I am burying Durga's statue somewhere to keep it safe from destruction. Of course, we have not yet found that statue. But so he actually did a research on all the various temples which are destroyed and the people who fought to, keep the icons alive. And so what we did was we used that as an inspiration. And we wrote these 10 stories basically based on that. To keep it bite-sized, to introduce to the younger people, to the people as such who don't have time to go through that 900-page scholastic work, that bite-sized stories, to get an idea of what those people felt, how those people struggled, and kept that alive. And again, as I said, that's one of the reasons why we are there. We are Sanatana. It's because of these little people, these small people, everybody contributing together. And that's how we basically, from Boon, the sagar is there. That Sanatan is because everybody contributes that. And that's where the moksha can only be possible when everybody comes together. Moksha of one person cannot happen because you are all part of the same Atma, right? Which is spread out on thousands of billions of people, right? Unless everybody gets moksha, there's no reason for actually having moksha. That's why Krishna comes and Vishnu comes again and again, because he is happy doing this. So that's the point, and that's why this Flight of Deities it's about these 10 stories about people who have fought to preserve the icons and get them back.
Okay. Thank you, Pranshu ji. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.